Okay, so that's the writing process here. So you have 5 steps. It's all about the pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. I'm sorry about that transition that just happened here. Simply, I was dumb and I was using music again, thinking I was able to contain it. It was not. The music is uncontainable. It's covering everything. So I'm re-recording the video, but I don't have the. It's complicated. The bottom line is I'm talking about those different steps. So what we have in the 5 stages of the writing process, it's pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. Each of those steps is really important, and you want to go through all of those steps. You don't want to skip over any. You don't want to do only the last one. You don't want to publish when it's too early. So I use a dummy prompt in that example. Let's describe an example of negative and positive feedback here. And I really, that was an essay before for one of my exams. It's not anymore. It's not going to be one in the future either. The point being, you take a prompt like that, and sometimes in an exam, you have 50 minutes to answer a bunch of questions in that essay question. Sometimes you have a full 2 days at home to work on that essay. So what's happening is you're gonna be able to do it in different ways, and so you want to plan based on the time you have. So really keep that in mind while we go through those steps. Okay, now that that's said, the first step is pre-writing. The pre-writing, it's all about creating kind of an outline, and that outline here that I have took me around 5 minutes to write down. So it's really brainstorm and write down ideas that you want to talk about. And let me just skip it here when I have it this way here. So before I show you, I want to show you the process. So the way I show you the process is what I would do when I create an outline is create the meat of the paper. That's what you want to talk about first. And here we're talking about negative and positive feedback. So I'm going to choose an example for each. I chose cereal packaging plan and house cold room temperature. So let's start with the house room temperature. The house room is the negative feedback, and the cereal packaging plan is the positive feedback. So in the case of house room temperature, I've got listed here some different choices, some different points. I want to talk about the cold winter day, the set point of 68 Fahrenheit, how the temperature inside is lower due to the outside cold, and then the heating kicks in and normal inside temperature goes back to 68 Fahrenheit. Okay, fair enough. That's just a normal thermostat, right? Now for the cereal packaging plant, it's more, I chose that example because I used to work in a cereal plant, so it's really easy for me to talk about it, and you should do things like that. You should choose examples that are easy for you. They don't need to be fancy, they just need to be exact, and in that case, it's a positive feedback. So in that example, I'm going to talk about the oven and the ingredient, the set point of making cereals, conveyor belts to packaging trucks, packaging trucks that are then shipped. Okay, and that leads to making more cereals. So I got those that I wrote down. You see there are typos in there, problems and all. Not a big deal. So now that we have that done, I do want some structure because I got some time for that essay. You may not have the time if you do it for in-person exam, but if you do it at home, you may want to consider adding an introduction and a conclusion. And those 2 parts are really what cement your understanding of a subject. So those 2 parts are more how you bring the reader into the subject. So you want an introduction. In my case, I chose an introduction that talks about the broad strokes of negative and positive feedback because I want the reader to have a first general description of those, and then I can focus on describing my examples, and hopefully I convince the reader that each of those examples is a good example of the negative and positive feedback. In my conclusion, I want to wrap it up and show what I took away from that. So I want to underline similarities and highlight differences. And that's really the outline, that easy. It's just what you do. You just have the meat of your paper that you do first, and then you work a little bit around to get transitions in, to get things that make sense, to get a story line. That's your outline from top to bottom. So now that we have the outline done, you go back to your prompt, you make sure you answer it. Now that you're sure, okay, I'm really talking about negative, positive feedback, it's time to go to the drafting. And the drafting part, I'm sorry to say it, but it's literally just puking on the paper. And that drafting part, when you're gonna, just actually scroll slower? No, it's more. Okay. The drafting part here, it's all about the actual writing down. And that's not going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty ugly. Here I've done it already. So what I'm choosing to do is to show you the way I do it, and I'm going to read it. The point is really to understand that it's going to be bad. Everybody writes a first draft that is bad. Then you improve it. But the key is to not stop and correct every typo, every mistake. Just move on, keep writing, keep writing. So here I start with my introduction, and I just say negative and positive feedback processes are essentially loops guiding a system reaction to disturbances. On one hand, negative feedback is concerned with maintaining an internal consistency. On the other hand, positive feedback is concerned with running away from the point of origin. Importantly, a system set point decides of a forward for that system. It's not even English part of it, but it does the trick, and that's all I kind of care. So that's my introduction as a first draft. You then move on to the serial packaging plan. So I go back to my outline, make sure I've got the points, okay, and then when I wrote it, I just simply wrote something as they come out, you know. And as you can see here, I'm kind of highlighting a 3 lines long sentence. That's pretty bad. So let's see, let's read it all. Serial packaging plant is an example of positive feedback. Making serial is the set point of this system. This process takes place at the oven, where ingredients are mixed and baked together into cereals out of the oven. The cereals are transported onto conveyor belts until the packaging machines, where cereals are weighed and added to cereal boxes and then packed into cartons of 10 cereal boxes to finally be piled onto pallets of 700 cereal boxes. I cannot even breathe through that. So it's bad, right? Those pallets, like that's typo, are loaded onto trucks and shipped out of the plant. Each cycle triggers more cereals to be made as long as trucks are shipping cereal boxes. Okay, I get the ideas. It's pretty bad, but I get the ideas. So I'm happy with that, and I don't look back. I just keep going. So I'm gonna read the next example. That's all about temperature inside a house. So temperature inside a house is an example of negative feedback. On a cold winter, I was drinking my hot chocolate and I got cold. I keep my house at 68 Fahrenheit during the winter. The temperature inside my house dropped to 65. Thankfully, the thermostat detected it, and the furnace kicked in, warming up my house. It's better for hot chocolate, but not hot otherwise. What's the point of drinking hot chocolate while looking at the snow outside the window? What was I thinking about? I swear I did not write that just to be funny. It was literally what came out when I was writing it. Thus, my house temperature went back to 68 Fahrenheit. Any further lowering of the temperature due to the outside condition would be met with more heat to maintain the internal consistency of my house temperature as set on my thermostat. Well, okay. So that's all the ideas are there, but it's pretty bad. Once again. So what I'm going to do now is just move on, not looking back, not correcting all of those typos, all of those mistakes that you can see all over the place here. I'm just moving on. And I read my conclusion. Both positive and negative feedback are made of chain of steps, starting from the system set point, systems disturbances, the trigger system adjustments. Negative feedback will work against such disturbances in an effort to maintain the system at its set point, whereas positive feedback will enhance such disturbance, taking the system away from its set point. Just reading it out loud, typos are screaming at me to be corrected, grammar is wrong. But once again, I did the trick. I did what I set out to do, which was to underlie similarities and show differences. So now that we have a whole text like that, we're just going to go to the drafting is done, where we go to the revising stage. The revising stage, you should actually take a little bit of time away from the draft after you've done it, because the important part is to not go one by, like, remember that diminishing return, at that point you're tired. If you keep working, you're not going to do a great job. So if you can give yourself some time, let's say at home you have some time, you can do that. Now you can say like, hey, during an exam, Dr. Luke, how do I do that? Well, if you know you have an essay to write, you may want to do the outline first, then answer a bunch of questions, then go back to the puking of the words, the drafting stage, then answer more of the questions. So when you have a choice to navigate your exam, give yourself some breathing room between the different writing stages. If you wait until the end to start writing your whole thing, it's going to be bad. But at the same time, professors understand as well that when you are given that limited amount of time, we're not expecting perfect work, right? So you can balance things, but that's how you get out of it ahead, because if you think about it in advance, you write your outline as soon as you start your exam, then you go to some multiple choice question, true, false, whatever. Then you go back to your drafting, then you do some more questions, then you go back to your revising, and you went through all the stages, cleared your mind up in between each of them, and so you're ready to do a really good job every time. And it's important because a fresh mind catches new mistakes. So the revising part, as you can see here, I'm going through the spelling and grammar. That's the first thing you want to do. Word is really bad, but it provides you a first check. It's not perfect. I don't care about the grammar structure, so I just correct typos. I ignore all the passive voices, all of those different things. So you can see palettes, I modified it. Then there's another problem with a passive voice. I add a comma, consistency, I make sure it's correctly spelled. And then when that is done, that's really the first layer. Word is happy with that, but it's not good, right? Word just tells you grammatically and vocabulary and typo wise, it's okay. It's not over though, because first of all, Word doesn't catch everything. Second of all, we have to do more work. So let's get through it. I'm going to start with my introduction here, and I'm going to just literally start looking at it and revising it. I made sure to check back my outline. Now I'm back on track, and I'm like, okay, negative, positive feedback on one hand. So the outline, it's all about describing both processes in broad strokes. Okay. So I got everything now with the prompt as well, showed on my screen. So that's pretty good, because like that I can have everything in one place. I can say, okay, describe an example of negative and positive feedback. That's the idea, that's the main goal. Never forget to go back to that. And now I want to describe both of those processes, right, in broad strokes. Okay, so let's go. The way I've done that is I just read each sentence and I start modifying a little bit the way I want to say things. And it's really by going back and thinking like, is that sentence really saying what I want? And you'll see like the way I'm doing it, I'm actually simplifying things, taking away weird structure, making it more streamlined. So I want to make sure here I'm reading that sentence at the end, important, the system set point, all of that is kind of out of place. I want to input set point in each of those two first sentences before that. Like that I can take care of the last sentence. So I can be like from the system set points around a predetermined set points, and now I can do that whole sentence because I don't need a separate sentence, I put it in. And you can see now the two sentences on one hand, on the other hand, it's kind of mirroring each other's. It's pretty good. So now your introduction tells me what is a negative feedback, what is a positive feedback, in general broad term. It's great. And so I can then now move on to the next part. So I'm looking at the serial packaging plant. I make sure I have all the steps in my mind. That first sentence here is great because it's mirroring the first sentence of the second paragraph. So it's really good because those two introductory sentences, they literally set the tone for the whole paragraph. And everything in the paragraph needs to be about that. And when you switch paragraph, having the same sentence structure tells the person, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through the same thing as the first paragraph, but for another thing that is now stated to me. Okay, so serial packaging plant feedback. A lot of that I'm realizing is a lot about details and things about serials, but maybe it's not that important for the writing about negative feedback loop, in that case positive feedback loop. So I'm going to really clear it up and focus more on the general idea. The way you're going to do that is you want to write sentences where the subject is actually the important part. So here I'm starting saying like the oven, I'm not happy with that subject, so I'm going to go with the active voice because it's easier to write with active voice. I'm going to say we mix the cereals, the ingredients, and then I'm realizing that is the subject we actually the important part here? Is it what we care about? Not really. What's really important is more the ingredients in themselves, and then I'm going to be like writing about the ingredient are mixed into the oven, But the problem with that is, once again, I'm realizing what I care about is the oven. Look at your outline and you realize that the first step is the oven. So I'm just changing the subject to the oven. And then I'm going to use passive voice, but it's okay because now I put the emphasis on what matters. That's the difference between passive and active voice. It's where the emphasis is. Passive voice put the emphasis on the complement, on the second part of a sentence. Active voice put the emphasis on the first subject. And when here I want to emphasize the oven, I go with that structure. The oven is where ingredients are mixed and baked into cereals. And then I don't want to repeat things. I don't want to make it like cumbersome. And all of what's gonna be next is it's a long sentence, right? It's a 3-line sentence about sales. It's kind of convoluted, and since I use first, I'm gonna use a structure sentence, a structure word to just show change. And then once again, I'm gonna start thinking about subject. What matters is that idea of going away from the set point. So I'm gonna use that in my text to show that to the reader. And what's better than a conveyor belt? Conveyor belt transport the cereals to packaging machines. That shows that I'm going away from that set point. So not only I'm going away in the system, but I'm also physically going away. And that's kind of using an image to show that. Now I'm highlighting all that part about cereals, which is great if you care about cereals and you're a cereal maker. But when you're about negative and positive feedback, that's your prompt, don't forget it. Is that really important? Maybe we don't really care. I'm just gonna get rid of all that and just get to the gist of it. I'm going to just focus on what's happening and what is really important. So what's important is what you do with them and how you ship them out. So after being packaged on pallets, it doesn't matter how many cereal boxes, doesn't matter how many grams of cereal per box is, doesn't matter. It's not necessarily about that here. So I'm just going to go ahead and think about what all of those are. So I'm going to say onto pallets, cereals are then loaded onto trucks for shipping. It's pretty good. It's focusing on the trucks and the shipping. So now I don't really need that, but I want to keep out of the plan because that's important, showing that it's leading the plan, which is what triggers more sales to be made, right? And so instead of it being about cycles, I'm just going to go with shipment. More cereal to be made as long as trucks are shipping cereal boxes. Yeah, as long as trucks keep. Yeah, that's probably shipping. And here I'm like starting with the cereal out of the plant. I'm not sure I'm happy with that structure. Maybe I'm going to be fine with it. Maybe I'm going to be fine. Each shipment triggers more cereals to be made. I like the paragraph. First the oven, I'm going to read it, and just making sure everything fits. Well, seems okay. I get some passive voices, but it's not a bad thing when it's to emphasize the right thing. To be made. Yeah, let's see if we can maybe do something about that. Yeah, more cereal baking better. As long as I keep shipping a cereal out of that. Maybe it's too much cereals. Project is better. Yeah, let's go with project. Okay, so now we're going to switch. We're going to go to the next paragraph about the temperature inside the house, mirroring the structure. Is that actually the real system? Maybe it's HVAC, right? That's probably the system you want to talk about. And yes, it's a system. So the HVAC system is an example of negative feedback. Boom. Now all of that, well, it's a lot of about, all I want to say right now when I read that, it's cool story, bro. We don't care really. It's kind of literary. It's, hey, it's like, I don't know what you were trying to do. So I don't want to take you on a walk with me and a hot chocolate. So I'm just gonna focus back on what I want to talk about and try to make it a little bit more general than just, because now I'm an HVAC system, I can just be in a room. It doesn't matter that it's my house, right? So where the HVAC system is set at 68 Fahrenheit, and I'm going to mention set point because that's what I've done in the previous paragraph, will experience decreases in temperature. Okay. So now that I get those decreases in temperature, when that happens, what's happening to my system? Well, actually, it's in winter, so it's happened. So if the temperature drops or deviates away from the thermostat set point, no, maybe not from the thermostat. I just want to keep the thermostat for later, yeah? From the set point, the thermostat will engage the furnace to heat the room, to heat up the room. Back up, no, to heat the room back up. Okay, great. So that sentence is done. That takes care of all the literary part. Let's see. Now I want to talk about. So my outline, the lower heat and kicks in, the temperature comes back. Deviates away, lowers. If the temperature lowers from the set point, yeah, it just lowers. Like I'm kind of cleaning things right now, making sure it's straight. Well, now it's an HVAC in winter, so actually, it's gonna happen, right? The temperature is at 68 set point. I will experience decreases in temperature. Let's see. I don't really like that sentence actually. I'm probably just gonna go back to it later, so I'm gonna highlight it. I'll highlight it and think about it later. So let's go back to our paragraph here. So, well, yeah, okay, we covered all that. So I have no hot chocolate anymore. And then we're just gonna go right away here, and we're gonna focus on the further lowering of the temperature. The outside condition will be met with more heat to maintain the internal consistency of my house temperature. I set on my thermostat, so I need to take care of all those and stuff. It's way more like about the system right now. Okay, so met. So that sentence is great because indeed it's mirroring, like, shipment of a product outside of the plant. Yeah, it's noon. So it's mirroring that sentence, the structure of the end of a paragraph. So it's kind of saying we go back to maintain internal consistency. So okay, I'm okay with that paragraph there. Now I'm going to go to the conclusion, both negative feedback and of change, system disturbances, trigger, system adjustment. Yeah, then let's put some structure into that. System trigger, system adjustment. Negative feedback will work in such disturbances in an effort to maintain the system at its set point, whereas positive feedback will enhance such disturbances, taking the system away from its set point. Okay, so that paragraph is pretty good, but now I want to use my examples. I want to call back to them, so I'm going to add them in there, and I'm going to simply write example given, so e.g. And I'm just going to write the simple example for my paragraph. So the HVAC system, and then at the end I want to put e.g. The cereal packaging plant. And so like that, when you conclude, you remind the reader of what you said earlier, and you just, I don't know what's wrong here because it's correct. You remind the reader of the paragraph that you wrote before. And so here you have revised, right? So the revising is done, and now you want to take some steps away from that paragraph, from that work. So once again, if you're in an exam, you answer some more questions. And if you are at home, you give yourself an hour or two, a day or two, depending on what you have available. So now it's going to be the editing part. The editing part, it's all about ask for a friend, ask for anybody who can read it out loud. I found myself in some situations with not a lot of people around. So what I did is I used the screen reader, and I just asked the screen reader to read the text, and I would follow along. And when I do that, it's really handy. It's really helping you to just catch some mistakes that you can have made, you may have made. And so when you do that, you annotate your text reading it while someone else is reading it. And you can put correction in there and make and tell the person that's reading it, who's reading it, to just give you some feedback on it as well while they're reading it. So it's all about improving details and stuff. Editing is really not about rewriting. It's more about how can I change little details. So in that case here, I'm probably going to focus on that highlighted sentence and just be like, well, okay, what can I change in it? So, yeah, for example, I don't really like that sentence. I'm going to break it because it seems that the first part's kind of saying something and the second part another thing. So, for example, in a winter room with an HVAC system set at that, so that's going to be the end of that part. And then I wonder if I even need will experience, or maybe this room will experience decreases in temperature due to the outside conditions. Yeah, okay. But then it's not if the temperature lowers, it's going to be when the temperature lowers, because that's going to happen. You just said it, right? Okay. And yeah, I guess I'm going to just try to look at that part in the favor outside we made. Move back up to its set point. Yeah, remind of set point. Okay. So here I know that what I wrote is like 267 words. It's pretty polished. I'm done the editing and now it's all about the publishing. So the publishing is when you actually submit it online. If I look at that text here, as a student submitting that, it's probably a 10 out of 10, to be honest. To be honest, it's going to be 10 out of 10. If it's me judging myself, I'm going to be more critical. It's probably a 7. I can do better. But it's really, did that achieve what the prompt was about? Contrasting negative, positive feedback? Yes. Is there any grammatical mistakes? Typos? No, I corrected all of them, right? I made sure there was none. And maybe I missed 1 or 2, but big deal. I didn't have 10 of them, right? Probably didn't miss one. I hope I did not. Maybe there are. So really, that's when you find your end product. And your publishing can be submitting a paper for an exam online, or turning in your paper at the end of an exam in person. It can be publishing a paper like I do in scientific journals. It can be just uploading a video like I will do here with this video later on. So really, I hope that view of how I go through that process is helping you understand how to do it and also demystifying the whole process. It's crappy. You remember the story about the hot chocolate in front of the window looking at the snow? I mean, come on, man. It was bad, but it got better, and now the end product, it's not something I would have written out of my mind on top of the dome, you know. I would have had to think about it, which is what I've done by going through the process of outline, so pre-writing, then drafting, then revising, then editing, and then publishing. Really important that you do all those steps, be it that you have less or more time for each of those, but you need to go through the steps. So hopefully that video helped you. With that, I will leave you guys. You guys take care. Bye-bye.